Welcome, everyone, to the NoDQ.com live recap of AEW Full Gear 2025. Now, before I get started with my thoughts on the show, a little off topic. In addition to Full Gear, there was a AAA show tonight. D. Martin Fifth sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I'll get this out of the way. Some breaking news from AAA. The Lucha Brothers cut a promo towards the end of the event on Dirty Dominic Mysterio and El Grande Americano. So yes, the Lucha Brothers reunited. It appears that they will be facing Dominic and El Grande Americano in AAA. One would think that they'll be reunited on WWE television at some point. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the coming days. Thank you again, D. Martin Fifth. I appreciate it. And D. Martin Fifth also sent in a $10 super chat, which I will get to in a few minutes when we get to the National Championship match. Another very long AEW pay-per-view. I spent the last 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, actually 5 hours, last 5 hours of my birthday watching AEW. And then I start November 23rd, midnight, watching more AEW. I'm a broken record. Show is too long, and I do think it was excessive. If I had to use one word to describe this show. But let's break it down. I'm not sure if it's the longest show they've done, but it was certainly close. We had the tailgate brawl. Not much to it. I'll just recap the results. We had Max Caster and Anthony Bowens versus the Bang Bang Gang versus Big Bill and Brian Keith versus the Outrunners. Winning team gets $200,000. Juice pinned Bowens to win. Bowens was frustrated at Caster. Not much to it. Then we had a match that is like a one-hit note that they keep playing over and over again. We got the Boom and Doom, which is Big Boom, AJ, and QT Marshall against RPG Vice, which is Rocky Romero and Trent Beretta. Big Show was back. Paul White was out there, and he got involved a little bit, but it was the same routine we've seen with Big Justice getting involved. He did a diamond cutter at one point. AJ and Marshall pinned Trent with a doomsday blockbuster. The crowd enjoyed it. It's for the locals, but man, it feels like they just keep doing the same shtick with these guys. And I don't know. I enjoyed it the first time, but it's the same thing. Then we had Hook and Eddie Kingston versus the Workhorsemen. Very basic match. Nothing to it. Quick. Hook and Eddie got the win. Like a 2-minute match. Then we had a trios match. We had Mystico, Mascara Dorada, and Neon against the Don Callis family, which was Okada, Takeshita, and Hechicero. This was for the CMLL trios titles, I think. Okada did not show up at the beginning, continuing this storyline with Takeshita where they're not really on the same page. He did eventually show up, but they were not really getting along. And by the way, this match went into the beginning of the pay-per-view. Just like they did at Wrestle Dream, the last kickoff match transitioned into the pay-per-view event. You had Mystico getting injured. Now, remember this for later. Mystico got attacked and his arm was put in a chair and he was taken out. His arm was snapped or whatever, but he came back. He did come back and ended up winning the match for his team. Okada and Takeshita, they were unable to be on the same page. Mystico tapped out Hechicero and got the win. Remember this for later. Match was good, though, and they're continuing the angle with Okada and Takeshita. That's fine. We had Darby Allin versus Pac, which started off as like a straight up wrestling match. And then it did get more violent as the match went on. Darby had his ribs taped up. He had like burn spots on his body, and Pac was removing the bandages and rubbing the burns, and the crowd was very grossed out by that. And you had a back and forth match here with these guys. And then when Pac was in trouble, Darby was on the verge of winning. He put on the Scorpion Deathlock. We had the interference. Wheeler Yuta shows up. Referee gets distracted. Pac hits Darby with Sting's baseball bat. Not sure where they got that, but they were saying it was Sting's bat. And Pac got the 1-2-3 victory over Darby Allin, which surprises me a little bit. Figured Pac would lose this one, but no. Darby takes the L, and Pac picks up the win. It was an entertaining match. You got Darby taking his usual bumps. Nothing too crazy, though. I will say that. Not as wild as usual, but still a good opening match to start off the show. Next up, we had the Babes of Wrath, which is Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, versus the Sisters of Sin, which is Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Timeless Love Bombs, which is Tony Storm and Mina Shirakawa. And then Megan Bain and Marina Shafir. They have no tag team name. Match was fine. It was your second match of the evening. It was good, but fairly standard match. I was a little surprised by the outcome, though. You got Tony Storm scoring the pin and getting the win in this match. She pinned Harley Cameron. I was not expecting this because I figured a heel team would win, since the stipulation of this match was that the winning team would get to pick the stipulation for the next tournament match. Why would you have the baby faces win? The idea is you want the baby faces to have the disadvantage and have them with the odds against them. Here you're having the baby faces win and getting to choose the stipulation. And are they going to lose now? Because the last time we had something like this where Jamie Hayter's team won a match and got to choose their opponents, they ended up losing. Tony and Mina, are they going to lose now after winning the match and getting to pick the stipulation? Are they going to lose? I'm not a big fan of it. I really think that one of the heel teams should have won this and stacked the deck against the babyface team. I don't know. Match was fine, but it could have been on a Dynamite, really. Didn't need to be on the pay-per-view. All right, moving on here, we had Brodido versus FTR for the AEW Tag Team titles. Very good match with these guys. I really enjoyed this one. It was back and forth with these guys, and Brody came in, did a lot of the power moves, but Stokely Hathaway was there to help out his boys. He saved Dax Harwood from a dive by Brody, and then you got FTR doing a power bomb and frog splash combo to Bandido. Bandido, though, kicked out, and Bandido kept in the fight. He kept kicking out of moves, and he went after both members of FTR, but he did get hit with the Shatter Machine. Brody saved the day at last second, and then Cash Wheeler was able to hit Bandido with the AEW Tag Team title while the referee wasn't looking, and Bandido still managed to kick out of that. And then Brodido regained the advantage. They hit the Shatter Machine on Harwood, but he kicked out. And then FTR regrouped. They took out Brody with a spiked pile driver on the outside. And then they got in the ring, did a spiked pile driver to Bandido. He kicked out yet again. Bandido was like John Cena here, kicking out of all these big moves. And then Bandido was pretty much spent at this point. He flipped off FTR in a last moment of defiance. FTR then got the win with the Shatter Machine. 1, 2, 3, new tag team champions, which I did expect, considering Adam Copeland will be back, and one would think Cope and Christian will become champions and they will beat FTR to wrap up that story. No surprise here, FTR winning. I think it was the right call. Brodido had quite the run, though, so we'll see if they continue as a tag team or if they go their separate ways. All right, let's talk about the Casino Gauntlet. This was interesting / mind-boggling. So we have the national title. This was a gauntlet match for the national title. And as D. Martin Fifth pointed out, AEW national title looks like Tony Khan just picked up a recycled NWA WCW television title and slapped the AEW logo on it. I did see the title design, and yes, it looks very similar to the actual NWA national title, but it's its own lineage. I don't get it. I really don't understand why they're doing this when we already had the international title, and the idea was that it was going to be defended around the world, that sort of thing, be defended in other promotions. So why are we doing this now? Thank you, D. Martin Fifth, for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. What really grinds my gears about this match was what they did with the Hurt Syndicate. So Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin started the match. They were respectful, they were wrestling, but then Ricochet came out, cut a promo. He was complaining about them not being more aggressive. Then the Gates of Agony showed up. They attacked Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. Ricochet hit MVP with the microphone, and then the match continued with Lashley and Shelton Benjamin just laid out on the outside of the ring, basically dead, and you could see them as the match went on. I think it was about 10 minutes or so where Lashley and Shelton were just laying there on the floor. And I'm thinking, no referees are checking on them, so do they not care? It made no sense here. Where were the referees? And also Mystico got attacked earlier, and he came back, and he was fine, and he won his match. But the Hurt Syndicate, these two badasses, are just laying there on the floor. And I have to say, it completely took me out of this match. Like, all I'm thinking is, what the hell's going on with Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin? Like, literally the whole match, I was just thinking of that. So it ruined the match for me. It really did. The gauntlets are usually pretty entertaining. You had Orange Cassidy out there. You had members of the Death Riders. So maybe not all that interesting when you had Daniel Garcia out there, Wheeler Yuta. Then we got Kevin Knight, Roderick Strong, Mark Davis, Mike Bailey, Matt Menard, who has an issue with Daniel Garcia because they used to be besties. Then finally, after like 10 minutes, what felt like an eternity, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, they had all this time to take a nap or rest or whatever the hell they were doing. They come back in the ring and they start beating people up, but neither of them won the match. Guess who won the match, though? The person who won the match was Ricochet. Yes, the same guy who basically got squashed by Bobby Lashley is your first national champion. Okay. I wasn't a fan of this. I think it made the Hurt Syndicate look like idiots, and you're going to make Ricochet the first champion, but you have him beaten so decisively on Dynamite, and then he just wins the title. I don't know. I wasn't a fan, and I think this was a bad booking decision. I don't like it. It's a rough start for a title that really has no business existing in the first place. Yeah, didn't really care for it too much. And I'm just tired of the Ricochet Hurt Syndicate storyline, and I don't know if it's going to continue. I don't care. I want it to be over. Whatever, man. To me, this was a miss. This was a rare, just flat out miss on an AEW pay-per-view. This pay-per-view would have been better without this match. All right, let's move on here. We had Jon Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly in a no-holds-barred match. This was a very bloody match. As you would expect, it's a Jon Moxley pay-per-view match, so you know there's going to be blood. O'Reilly tried to put on the ankle lock, but Moxley escaped to the outside, and Moxley, channeling Abdullah the Butcher, he got a fork from Marina Shafir, and he stabbed O'Reilly in the head repeatedly with the fork. O'Reilly was busted open. Then O'Reilly was able to fight back. He sent Moxley into the ring post, and Moxley got busted open. So we had double juice, two guys bleeding in this middle of the show match when we still had a no DQ match to come and a cage match. So keep that in mind. We had a very violent back and forth with these guys. They tried some different submission moves. There was a chain that was introduced in the match, and Moxley stomped Kyle's head onto the chain, which is funny because the crowd started singing Seth Rollins' song. Not sure what that tells you when the wrestlers do the moves and then you get WWE chants from the fans. I mean, I feel like the 2019 AEW crowds would have never started chanting WWE phrases or singing songs or doing anything WWE related in a positive manner. O'Reilly still managed to fight back. He countered Moxley and put on the ankle lock, and he used the chain for leverage, for assistance, and Moxley tapped out again. So I was wrong on this one. And at this point, I thought, okay, maybe this is the babyface turn for Jon Moxley. He loses, and the Death Riders are going to kick him out of the group. But then after the match, Moxley attacked O'Reilly. So I don't know where things go from here. Maybe they're saving the turn. Probably a good idea because I think they had too many things going on during this show. And the crowd was chanting, "You tapped out." But one would think Moxley's got to be getting kicked out of the group sooner than later. And that's why he's doing all the tap outs. You know, they're going to say he's gotten weak, and they beat the crap out of him, and then he comes back as a face. I mean, otherwise, what are we doing here? All right, moving on. We had the other Kyle Fletcher, defending the TNT title against Mark Briscoe in a no DQ match. Now, this was a great match. I mean, this was a war. These guys had a bloody, violent battle. It would have been nice if it was the only match of its kind on the show without the other ultra-violent matches. But nonetheless, I thought they worked really hard, and they put on a spectacle. It was definitely a fun, carnage-filled match. More blood. Both guys juiced just like the other match. And instead of a fork, we had the Don Callis screwdriver that Fletcher was using as a weapon. And we had a lot of tables. We had ladders being brought in. And at one point, you had Briscoe trying to do a dive, a suicide dive, but Fletcher moved out of the way and Briscoe crashed through a table. And there was also a barbed wire table that got into the mix, and Briscoe ended up jumping off a ladder, doing the froggy bow, putting Fletcher through the barbed wire table. So it was very intense with these guys. A lot of violent spots during this one. We got thumbtacks. Fletcher did the spot where he put the tacks in Briscoe's mouth and gave him the super kick. And we had chairs set up on the outside, and Briscoe ended up putting Fletcher through the chairs. And then after the screwdriver was used by Fletcher, He gave Briscoe a brain buster. Briscoe somehow kicked out, and then they ended up in the corner, and Briscoe basically gave Fletcher a razor's edge through the barbed wire table, or one of the tables. I think it was the barbed wire table. I think the Froggy Bow was just a regular table. This was the barbed wire table, and then Briscoe hit the J Driller and got the 1-2-3 victory. There was even a point where Fletcher took the screwdriver and stuck it in the turnbuckle pad and tried to impale Briscoe with it, but nothing came out of that. But yeah, Briscoe won the match with the J Driller, got the title, and I think it was the right call. I know Kyle wasn't a really long champion. He did have a lot of defenses, and he was talking about being the champion that defended it the most, or coming close to it. But Mark Briscoe, he beat MJF, and they finally have really given him a strong push. So I'm happy for Jay Briscoe. I think it was the right call. Shout out to Noah Foster, the simple man. Thank you for the birthday comment. Thank you to everybody that left birthday comments. I really do appreciate it. It was a fun day. Had some Texas Day Brazil for dinner before the show. Make sure you guys follow Noah. Join the No DQ Predictions League for 2026. And yeah, I agree with Caleb. I think with the stipulation, if Mark Briscoe lost, he would have to join the Don Callis family. And I'm not a fan of those types of storylines. So I think the logical route here was Briscoe becoming the new champion. Hell of a match. I mean, it was a great match. But like I said, I wish the other match didn't have all the blood. We got 2 matches in a row with double blood, both guys bleeding in the match. And it was excessive. And believe it or not, that was not the last of it. Shout out to Teaching Color X8340. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Says, what a show. Another sweet pay-per-view set up by AEW. 8 out of 10. There you go. 8 out of 10 rating for AEW Full Gear. What did you guys think? Leave a comment. I have a pretty good idea of what my number is, but I'm still thinking in my head if I want to go with it or not. So stay tuned for that. All right, next up, Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express against the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander in a $1 million match. Winning team gets $1 million. Another really good match here with these guys. You would expect it with them. The Bucks, I know people hate on them, but I do think they're one of the best tag teams of the past decade, at least, if not longer. And Omega had a pretty good showing in here. You had Luchasaurus coming in, doing a lot of big moves, but then the Bucks, the tag team specialists, able to gain the advantage for a while. And of course, in these types of matches with the Bucks, you get things breaking down. Nobody's making tags. Everybody's doing their big moves. And the crowd was loving it. They were chanting AEW. The Bucks gave Omega a BTE trigger while Alexander had the ankle lock applied. Omega got to the rope. And then the Bucks countered these doomsday devices by landing on their feet. They did the super kicks, and they did end up pinning Jack Perry to win the match, which surprised me. I thought the Bucks were going to lose this to set up the turn, but instead the Bucks won, and they get the $1 million. They split it with the Don Callis family, and Callis, of course, takes his share. Now, after the match, the Bucks did leave with Don Callis seemingly joining the family. But then, as the Don Callis family attacked Omega post-match, the Bucks came to a decision. It was either the money or their old friend Kenny Omega, and they made the babyface turn. They went back to the ring and attacked the Don Callis family, cleared the ring. Jurassic Express shook hands with the Bucks. Omega came over but didn't want a handshake, and instead the Bucks and Kenny Omega hugged, and we had the official reunion of the Elite. And it was a nice moment. It was maybe the only interesting story. Like this show had a lot of great wrestling, as the pay-per-views do, but not really that many interesting stories and moments like this. So this was a pretty cool thing, something a little bit different for the show, and I definitely enjoyed it. I figured it was going to happen here. They did it a little bit different than I was expecting, but still very good stuff here. I think the Bucks as heels definitely has played itself out, and I think this is the right move going forward. All right, we got a couple matches left. Very long show. We had Kris Statlander versus Mercedes Moné for the AEW Women's title. I thought it was a really good match. They did a little bit of a slower paced match, a match where Statlander hurt her arm and Mercedes was targeting the body part. And these types of matches are good psychologically, but when you have to follow the matches that they had to follow, it was a tough time for them. Like they were struggling to get the crowd heat. Although Mercedes did it by basically baby facing herself because she's being the heel here, targeting the arm, but then she has to go and do the 14 amigos. You know how she does the 3 amigos, but she had to do 14, 13 to represent her championships, plus the 14th, which is the AEW Women's title. And she does this and she gets a standing ovation from the fans. So, it was a nice idea on paper, but if you're a heel, you should be trying to get heel heat, not trying to get a standing ovation from the fans. But you know what? It did wake them up. They were not too lively for the first part of the match. So it did work. It did get the fans into it. Statlander kept trying to make a comeback, but she was hurting. She couldn't make the cover right away. And Statlander did this avalanche rib breaker, but again, she was hurting. And they went back and forth with the pin attempts. And Statlander hit a package pile driver. Mercedes got to the rope. And then they kept countering each other's pile drivers. And then Statlander finally cinched in the Saturday Night Fever and got the 1-2-3 victory. Once again, Mercedes Moné unsuccessful in her bid to win the big one. She can win all the little ones, but she still cannot win the big one. And I like that. I'm glad they didn't go with Mercedes winning all the titles. And we'll see if her downfall begins, if she starts dropping those titles one by one. And then, eventually, she'll get the AEW Women's title eventually. But yeah, I'm glad Statlander got the win here. Very good match. I just feel like this is part of why I argue for shorter pay-per-views with fewer matches. I feel like if you had, say, a 6 or 7 match card, like this match would have been able to stand out more, but instead you have it on a 10 plus match event. I mean, really like 14 matches if you include that first hour, the kickoff show, and it just gets lost in the shuffle. But if you did like a 6 or 7 match pay-per-view and you just do one hardcore match instead of like 3, this match has more time to shine and you can actually breathe it in. And the problem is too, they're just on to the next match, on to the next segment. And it does really kind of just get lost in the shuffle. But I did think that they had a really good match, all things considered. All right, and finally, we had the main event, Hangman Adam Page versus Samoa Joe for the World Championship. Adam Page, the world champion, had different music, and my first thought was this sounds like some kind of a video game, and apparently it is. It's like one of those Red Redemption games. Never played one in my life, but I guess that's what it was. And I hope it was a one-off because I didn't think it sounded particularly interesting. Anyways, another match with double blood, double juice. Both guys bleeding. I mean, it's a cage match, so you would expect blood, but I really do think they overdid it on this show with the blood. It was excessive. Joe got busted open and he was bleeding buckets. Then Page was thrown into the cage. He got busted open. Page was using his cowboy boot as a weapon. Then Joe exposed the top turnbuckle, went for a muscle buster, but Page bit him. And then Page powerbombed Joe out of the corner. And at this point, we had the shenanigans. Cage match is supposed to prevent outside interference. Nah, they don't believe in that. We had Shibata out there, and he tried to climb up the cage, but Eddie Kingston stopped him. Then the referee got knocked down, and Page hit the dead eye. No referee to make the count. Then Powerhouse Hobbs showed up. He broke the cage door and went after Page, but Page was able to fight off Hobbs, and Joe took advantage, put on the Coquina clutch. However, Page got out of it. He sent Joe into the exposed turnbuckle. He hit the buckshot lariat, but again, no referee. So at this point, this screams title change. You know, Page had the match won not once, but twice. Hook shows up. He goes to check on the referee, and then he grabs the title. And Swerve, bro. We're not talking about Swerve Strickland just yet. But Swerve, of course, he hits Page with the championship. I mean, it was so obvious this is where it was going. As soon as Hook ran out there and he's checking on the ref, you're like, okay, he's going to turn on Page. And sure enough, he does. So Vince Russo 101 with the Swerve. The problem is the Swerve doesn't work when you think it's going to happen. You know, that's the thing. You don't want people to expect it. And this was just way too obvious. And then Joe hits the muscle buster. Referee comes to. And Samoa Joe is a two-time AEW champion. He had members of his Ops Dojo out there. And they came out there. And everybody was celebrating the Ops, the Dojo guys. But then the lights went out as Joe was celebrating his championship win. And Swerve, bro, Swerve Strickland is officially back. Missed about, 4 months of action, but he's back. He has new music, which Prince Nana can't really dance to as well, but I'm sure they'll come up with something new. Swerve is out there, new music. He came in there. He beat up the Dojo guys. Not a lot of heat. I mean, they did chant holy shit, but they were kind of quiet as Swerve was beating down the security guards. Again, problem with a 5+ hour show. If you cut it down a little bit, you know, the crowd might be more energetic for your big moment at the end of the pay-per-view. Just saying. So I think the length of the show hurt the show, because this was supposed to be, you know, one of the best moments of the year, but the crowd was a bit subdued and not really reacting much to the attack on the security guys. Joe, of course, escapes. Hangman Page, who's now the bridesmaid, with Swerve as the focal point. And Page gets to his feet, stands tall with Swerve, and Full Gear goes off the air. Interesting, because we got the Death Riders, and now they're basically just recycling the Death Riders. Like, I don't know how much longer the Death Riders will continue, but it almost feels like the Ops are the new Death Riders. You know, Page has lost the title, so we're back to where we were when Moxley was champion. We got the heel champion with his faction, and you know, these group of guys that are dominating the brand. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it, because they really are just recycling the Death Riders storyline with a different faction. And we still have the Death Riders too. So yeah, I don't know. Mixed feelings. All in all, I thought it was a very good pay-per-view, but I definitely had my issues with it. The primary one being it was too damn long. I think it hurt the heat, especially for the main event segment. I think it hurt the heat for the women's segment. And I think they did too much blood. I like a show to have some variety. And I think 3 matches with blood is definitely not necessary. one match, ideally, and maybe you can argue for two, but I think they did too much on this show, not allowing moments to breathe. And even, the title wins, like FTR winning, like I almost forget about those, and they don't really do much as far as celebrations go. Like the thing about WWE is when somebody wins the title, they get the pyro and, a big deal is made out of it. But with AEW, it's like, well, we got to get on to the next segment, next match. So the guy wins the championship and he can barely even hold it up before we move on to the next segment. And it just makes the title win not feel that important when you just transition to the next segment. Like, okay, aren't we supposed to care about the title change? Make it a big deal, but then you just move on to the next segment right away. So I think that's a problem. And they got to let moments breathe more. And, for people saying, oh, you're just praising WWE, you're against AEW. I think sometimes WWE is in the opposite direction where they have too much of these long drawn out segments and too much filler and not getting to the point. I think AEW goes in the other direction and they try to cram all this stuff in these 5-hour shows. I think we need shorter shows and allowing moments to breathe, but also at the same time, you don't want to just have a ton of commercials and a ton of filler without many things happening. Shout out to Oofman. Much love to Oof. He says with a $5 super chat, thank you, Oof, says, now we look forward to a 4-match Survivor Series with 3 10-minute commercials talking about how great of a city San Diego is. And that's a fair point. And I'm definitely with you on that. I think WWE goes in the opposite direction with, doing these short shows, but there's a lot of filler with the commercials and just random segments. They're better than they used to be, though. I will say that. You go back to the Vince era, sometimes they'd have these random ass promos on a pay-per-view that you're spending money on. And you're like, why are we watching this? And backstage segments that we don't need. They only did one on here. They did a segment. I forgot to mention this. They did a segment with Takeshita and Okada. They're both going to be in the Continental Classic, but so is Kyle Fletcher. Fletcher's pissed off that they weren't out there to help him. So that we did get one little backstage segment. But yeah, WWE does a lot of them. And I think that's a bit much. Joe being the champion, I would have preferred somebody like Hobbs, pull the trigger on him. I keep saying that because I think Joe's great, he's awesome. I remember watching him when I was like 18 years old at Millennium Pro Wrestling in Southern California, in Woodland Hills, California. Went to some of those PWG shows like in 2004. He was on our show back in 2004. So Joe's been one of my favorites for many years, but the guy is pushing 50. And I think it's really important for AEW to start building to the future. And I keep saying this, Hobbs is a great candidate. I mean, he's just looks like a star, he looks like a live action figure brought to life. And I don't know why you don't invest on this guy and pull the trigger on him and just make him larger than life. He can be that guy, and they don't do it. And it's frustrating. I felt the same way about Wardlow. These guys could be major superstars. Give them the push, give them the moments, and you could possibly fill your arenas with these guys. Shout out to Dave Scheffler, who sent in $2. Thank you, Dave. Says, worst predictions ever by me with no DQ. I'm with you, man. I didn't do too good on this one. I got some of them wrong, and I'm all for predictability, but also I feel like you don't want to be too predictable, but you also don't want to go in the other direction either. And I think the most important thing is to have the the booking decisions make sense. And I'm still scratching my head about Ricochet. But yeah, overall, I'm going 7 out of 10 for AEW Full Gear, which is what I would classify as a very good show. But I do think it fell a little bit short of being a great show. 7 out of 10, very good. Could have been better if you cut a few matches and did a few different booking decisions. I would have gone higher. That's all I got for tonight. It is past 1 a.m. and I need some rest. So thank you guys very much for watching the stream. I really do appreciate it. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com. We got predictions for Survivor Series Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we also got the No DQ review, and we got more content coming up here this week. So stay tuned, everybody. Take care. Say yes to NoDQ.com. And I will see you guys next time.